God's sovereignty and the phrase at the appointed time, we will start having it in our present moment every day. So we want God to be sovereign. And I know like every single one of us, we have our own things, right? Our own burdens that we want God to be sovereign over: job, money, health, relationships, family members coming to Christ, possibly. We want God to show his sovereignty, but the thing is, sometimes we want God to do it the way we want it done, not the way God wants it done. And one thing we need to really challenge ourselves to really understand is that the way God wants something done is a million times better than whatever we can possibly think it should, like, you know what I mean? Like, however we can possibly think it should be done. So, throughout the Bible, we see God being sovereign over everything. From creation, for example, on the first page of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, God said, "Let there be light." But then when you read further in I don't know what verse it is, but it says on the fourth day, he created the sun, the moon, and the stars. Where was that light? Or what was that light, right? It certainly wasn't the sun, right? But Jesus is that light. That's God's sovereignty. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, Joseph told his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is being done, the saving of many lives." We see God's sovereignty over Moses' life. Moses was a Hebrew man who was taken and adopted by someone in the Egyptian politic, right? And then he ended up fleeing Egypt, went to the wilderness and spent 40 years there, only to come back and go back into the wilderness for another 40 years. Aaron couldn't have done that. That's God's sovereignty. We see God's sovereignty in bringing Ruth and Boaz together. Ruth just happened to be in the field of Boaz, the kinsman redeemer of her family. Just happened. That's God's sovereignty. We see God's sovereignty in making Esther queen so that Esther could save her people from genocide. That's God's sovereignty. And ultimately, we see God bringing Jesus at the time that he did so that the world can know who God is. Sorry, my computer was like dying on me. So that's God's sovereignty over everything. Okay, I'm gonna pause. Am I communicating?